Well, it's been a minute, but we're back for another episode of Waynesburg's only national sports debate show, Plead Your Case. I'm Caleb Yauger, and I'm joined today by Logan Lepiscopo and Colin Rhodes. A lot has been happening in the sports world as of recent, from the MLB Hall of Fame controversy to a thrilling NFL playoffs to Tom Brady retiring to Super Bowl 56 featuring two high-caliber teams. But we're going to cover all of that for you today, so sit back and relax. You know what time it is. It's time to plead your case.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
On July 24th, 2022, David Big Papi Ortiz will be one of the members honored in Cooperstown, New York. He was the only player inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Baseball Writers Association of America, making it in his first year on the ballot. But with all the controversy surrounding players like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Alex Rodriguez not making it to Cooperstown, many people have voiced their opinions for and against them. So we're going to start with Colin. Colin, what do you make of this Cooperstown conundrum?
Well, I think that it really should just depend on how much the use of PEDs define their career. For some players, maybe like Barry Bonds, that's what made them such an exciting player to watch. Others, not so much.
One thing, like Barry Bonds, you mentioned his career, PEDs, how much of a factor it played. You do have to look, though, overall at his accolades that he acquired over his career. Obviously, the PEDs may have been a factor. It might have caused him to be the league-leading home run hitter, currently has the most career home runs. Then you also have to look at all the other accolades that he got: 7-time MVP, 8-time Gold Glove, 12-time Silver Slugger. It's not just his hitting that propelled him to be such a great player and have such a tremendous impact on baseball. It's the fact that he was able to be so dominant and teams were afraid of him. And you argue that PEDs played a factor in how significant it was in their career. Back a while ago, kind of at the start of David Ortiz's career, there was a random league testing. He tested positive for PEDs. Though he does say it was an over-the-counter drug, there's no conclusive evidence on that. But I think that PEDs, whereas Barry Bonds, how significant that was, or David Ortiz, the fact he even had them tested, should play a factor in Ortiz making it his first year.
Now, how do you guys feel in general about the use of PEDs and this question of allowing guys into the Hall of Fame? But for example, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, the guys that were some of the biggest home run hitters in MLB history. I heard an argument that said basically, let these guys into the Hall of Fame, but put basically an asterisk beside them to say these were the guys that were in the steroid era or used PEDs throughout their careers. So what do you guys make of that? Should they be allowed in general? Is there a little grace for them? What do you think, Colin?
I mean, I think there should be some grace if they're able to redeem themselves at some point in their career. Maybe going off the idea of David Ortiz tested positive for PEDs at an early point in his career, but he did become a great player afterwards, didn't test positive. So I think if somehow they redeem themselves regardless of the PEDs, they should get into the Hall of Fame, maybe not with an asterisk.
I'm going to agree with the fact that the asterisk maybe could be a thing. I don't want it to be like a thing, though, where every single PED player is now reevaluated for their Hall of Fame consideration, because then you have basically a PED Hall of Fame in a sense. So I think limiting the guys that have used it and are known to have, like Barry Bonds, like Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, he still has some years to go. Maybe he gets in, maybe he doesn't. He was a fantastic third baseman. But as we saw with Barry Bonds, using PEDs plays a tremendous role on if you make it into Cooperstown or if you don't make it.
And in order for players to make it into Cooperstown, they have to have between more than 5, but excuse me, they have to have more than 75, at least 75% of votes if they if they're less than 75%, that they are considered ineligible. For example, David Ortiz had 307 votes, but he got 77.9% of the votes. But for example, Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling, they had a lot of votes, but the percentages were under 75%. But the guys that are putting these guys into Cooperstown are the Baseball Writers Association of America and the Veterans Committee. So what do you guys think about these people making the decision for guys making it into the Hall of Fame?
I really don't think writers should have such a big role in deciding who makes it into the Hall of Fame or not. You're putting a lot of just power into people who may not have the same sort of experience in the league as other people, such as veterans. I think it would be better to have writers represented in a committee of voters, similar to how the Pro Football Hall of Fame has their selection committee, but maybe the Veterans Committee can find a way to fix that.
Like you mentioned, Caleb, Barry Bonds receiving, David Ortiz receiving 307 votes. When you look at the voting, it seemed like every single player had a different number of voters, and that may have played a factor on the percentage of the players. So I think there needs to be a thing where if it is the Writers Association voting, that needs to be the same amount of votes for each player, so that way they all have that fair chance and have that same percentage of odds getting into the Hall of Fame.
Great discussion to start out with MLB, gentlemen, but when we come back, we'll be taking a turn to the NFL. You're watching Plead Your Case right here on WCTV. Tom Brady has officially retired. Officially. All speculations are out of the way. So guys, now that he's officially done with the game of football, let's reflect on Brady. Logan Lepiscopo, what are your thoughts about him? What comes to mind?
It's short, simple answer, the GOAT. Greatest quarterback to ever play football. I don't think there's any dispute about that anymore. I think that's the sole reason he retired. You look at other sports, like, for example, basketball, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, that's still a heavy debate. There's no debate in football about who's better than Tom Brady. No other player is going to hit 7 rings in a career, at least in my eyes. He has more Super Bowls than 32 NFL franchises. It's simple and easily put. The greatest quarterback to ever play, potentially the greatest player to ever play.
I may not agree with him being the greatest player to ever play. I think that should go to Jerry Rice. But there's no doubt he's been the most successful quarterback to have ever played in the National Football League. 7 rings, 6 of them with one team, 1 with another that he got in his first year of playing with them. While he did have some amazing supporting casts with his wide receiver core and like Gronkowski as his tight end, he still played a major role. And don't forget, he's a multiple-time most valuable player winner of the league, and there's a good potential he's going to win it his final year.
I think you bring up an interesting point, Colin. I think there's a difference between the most talented player of all time and the greatest player of all time. In my eyes, I don't think necessarily Tom Brady is the most talented of all time, but in terms of greatness, of what he has achieved, I mean, he broke his own passing record in his 40s, in his last season of his career. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding. 7 Super Bowl rings, the greatest of all time in my opinion, and in my eyes as well. Now we're going to look at the NFL playoffs in general, and gentlemen, my goodness gracious, these playoffs have been just, I mean, it's cardiac arrest every single game. I mean, what's your opinion about these playoffs?
It's been tremendous. I mean, the wild card round was pretty good as it was, except, you know, the couple blowout games that we had. But the divisional round, 4 games decided by game-winning drives. 3 game-winning field goals, a game-winning overtime touchdown that has sparked a lot of controversy once again about the overtime rules. But like you said, Caleb, it's like having a panic attack, a heart attack every single game in this playoffs. And it seems like it just keeps getting better and better every single game. I'm really excited to see this Super Bowl. 2 franchises that have not really been in the spotlight for decades.
Now, out of all the games that we have witnessed so far, what do you think is the best one that sticks out in your mind? Obviously, the Chiefs and Bills game was probably #1, but would you agree that that was the best one, or would you put one up there with it?
I would definitely agree that the Chiefs and Bills was the best game, but if I had to pick another game, I'm going to say the Rams and Buccaneers, just for the sole fact that Tom Brady almost put together another historic game, another historic comeback. In that Super Bowl against the Falcons, it was a 25-point deficit the Patriots had, came back, won it in overtime. This time, down by 24, foiled by Cooper Kupp, but he almost put together another historic drive that maybe could have A, put him in the Super Bowl again this year, and B, potentially kept him another year in the league.
And Colin, what are your general thoughts of the NFL playoffs so far, and what game has stuck out to you the most?
Well, I think it's been an odd year for the playoffs, to say the least. It is only the second year with the new 14-team format, but I do think there have been a lot of great games, especially, again, the divisional round. All of them were chosen by, or at least decided by 1 score, or even 3 points for most of them. For the best game other than Bills-Chiefs, I would agree Rams-Buccaneers was the best one. It was great to see such a tight game towards the end, and I honestly really enjoyed seeing Matthew Stafford get ahead of Tom Brady in this game.
Yeah, these NFL playoffs have been just absolutely spectacular. I'm going to take a little bit of a different route. Obviously, the Chiefs-Bills game was #1 in my opinion. But I think the second best was probably that the Bengals and Chiefs game. I think for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in that squad to go into Arrowhead Stadium and take down Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the Chiefs. That is a hard job in and of itself to do. Are you guys surprised by your AFC and NFC champions?
To say the least, NFC, I'm not too surprised. The Rams went all in this year. They made that very apparent, getting Von Miller, getting Odell Beckham Jr., and everybody thought maybe his season was over once Robert Woods went out, but that acquisition of Odell Beckham really opened things up for the Rams offense. AFC side, though, I think surprised that the Bengals won is an understatement. Nobody had this team, #1, making the playoffs, but #2, nobody had them winning their own division. So the Bengals, they came out and went from a top 5 pick in the draft to now a team in the Super Bowl, potentially going to get a ring with all these young, talented guys, and could be the start of a new dynasty.
Colin, over to you.
Honestly, I think it's the exact same as what Logan said. Chiefs losing to the Bengals was a really big surprise to me, simply because the Chiefs aren't a team to just lose an upset like that. They've had a great offense and a great defense going into this game even, and then they just fell apart in the second half. Very uncharacteristic, to say the least. As for the Rams, I'm not all that surprised. They started off hot. They had some struggle midseason, but they got hot again. They've been hot ever since. I am not surprised at all to see them in the Super Bowl.
Now, here's a question for you guys. If Tyreek Hill would have scored that touchdown going into halftime, would the Chiefs have won the game?
That's a tough one to say, because I feel like the whole second half would have went completely different. The Bengals' play style would have been completely different, but it is the Chiefs. A touchdown to end the half to put them up definitely would have given them that momentum into the locker room. Like you mentioned, playing in Arrowhead is very tough as a road team, so I would like to say the Chiefs would have won this game and been in the Super Bowl again, but again, we can't speculate. We can't say that it definitely would have for sure happened if they scored.
I agree that if they did score before halftime, it would have totally changed the tone of the second half, but I still do think the Chiefs would have gone on to win that game. Like, again, the momentum, and it also just the larger deficit the Bengals would have had to come back from. I don't think they would have made it.
And now, is Joe Burrow that guy going over to the Bengals side of things?
100%. I don't think that any other person at quarterback for the Bengals could do what Joe Burrow's been doing. He has been playing absolutely fantastic. I don't know what the Baltimore Ravens did to him, But since that last game that they played where he threw for 525 yards, Joe Burrow's been that quarterback that we expected coming into the draft. #1 overall pick, suffered that injury last season. I think he's making a clear-cut case that he is the unanimous comeback player of the year. And he is, in my opinion, the whole sole reason why the Bengals are winning and are now seeing themselves potentially hoisting the Lombardi Trophy.
I wholeheartedly agree. You don't see a player come back from an injury like that, even in just his second year of his career, take a team to a Super Bowl, the chance to win the Super Bowl. I just, no words, honestly, other than just he has been phenomenal. If I'm a Bengals fan right now, the future is looking bright.
Joe Burrow, there's just something about the confidence that he has, and even a lot of us might be Steelers fans or whatever, but you got to respect Joe Burrow for what he did, and with this Bengals organization that has not really had a lot of success over the years. Just as a final question to you guys in general, and we talked about Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and the future of the NFL. I personally think that the NFL is in good hands in terms of we have young, talented quarterbacks and a lot of young talent that's going to really be entertaining us for the next 10 or 15 years. Do you guys agree that the NFL's future is bright?
Easy, 100%, no hesitation. It's in perfect hands. We see a generation leaving out. Big Ben retiring, Tom Brady retiring. We don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. Maybe he retires. Maybe that era is over as well. But one thing I wanted to kind of mention about this new era is Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. I find it kind of ironic that these two are facing off in the Super Bowl because I see them both as that quarterback of their time that just everybody loves and wants to see win. Like, no matter who your favorite team is, no matter what the Bengals did to your team during the regular season or whatever may have happened, Joe Burrow's just a very likable guy, very likable quarterback. And I think a lot of the young guys in the league are also very likable, and a lot of people want to see them succeed.
Well, I don't exactly think Joe Burrow is the most likable young quarterback in the league right now. He's very enjoyable to watch, but his personality is a bit too cocky, for my opinion. But I do agree Matthew Stafford is that quarterback everyone wants to see succeed, especially spending so many years with the Detroit Lions, of all teams, who are known for wasting great careers. Seeing him on the Rams and going into the Super Bowl is such a great thing to watch. I also think this is almost like a old guard versus new guard type showdown we saw last year, but I think it's going to be better simply because both teams are better.
Well, Super Bowl 56 is around the corner, so that's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go anywhere. Sunday, February 13th, the calendars are marked at 6:30 p.m. from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. It's Super Bowl 56 featuring the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. Both teams have had tough and hard-fought paths to get to this point, and it should be a good one. Logan, what's your general analysis about the Super Bowl?
Like we said in the last segment, I'm happy to see two teams that have not had very much success in decades on decades. The Rams made the Super Bowl a few years ago. Were very unsuccessful in that game, a very boring Super Bowl, if you will. But seeing Matthew Stafford potentially get a chance at a ring, very exciting to see. And this young Bengals team, Joe Burrow, coming back off that horrific injury he had last season, to see him take that team to a complete 180 in just a matter of months is absolutely absurd. It's something I've never seen before.
I have to agree. This is really an exciting Super Bowl to look forward to. Like, again, the Bengals, they've never won a playoff game since 1991. Here they are in the Super Bowl already. And then, again, the Los Angeles Rams, they're back after getting destroyed in Super Bowl 53, if destroyed by 10 points is appropriate. But this is also a very different Rams team. Sure, they have Sean McVay as their head coach, but Jared Goff is no longer there. They've added Matthew Stafford. They've got Von Miller, a bunch of other new faces, which really makes it a different team than the last one to make it. I'm excited for sure.
Now, you guys mentioned that Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Rams. Boy, that Super Bowl was boring, wasn't it? I mean, it was so low scoring. There was really nothing happening, but this Super Bowl is probably going to be a little more entertaining. But you guys got to pick a winner and an MVP. Who you got?
It's definitely tough because I feel like both these teams are so very well-rounded offensively and defensively. A lot of people think the Bengals' successes came off Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's connection. But really, you have to look at all the free agents that the Bengals went out and got and the rest of their draft picks that they had this year. The main guy who I think should stick out more than maybe even Jamar Chase is Trey Hendrickson, who's been so disruptive, whether it's getting to the passer, stopping the run. He's been a huge part in helping this Bengals defense. And the Rams, like we mentioned earlier, adding Von Miller, getting Odell Beckham Jr., just a complete different team from the last Super Bowl they were in. I'm going to take them to win. I'm going to pick the LA Rams to win this game. And I think it's going to come down to a final play, final drive by Matthew Stafford. And I think Cooper Kupp is going to win the Super Bowl MVP as he should the Offensive Player of the Year in the league.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Logan. This is really just two great teams going against each other, two great offenses, two great defenses, but I really do think veterans and experience are going to be the difference maker in this one. Aaron Donald's been to the Super Bowl, Von Miller's been to 2 and is already a Super Bowl MVP. We're going to have a veteran quarterback in Matthew Stafford for the Rams. So really, I would choose the Rams over the Bengals. It's going to be a one-score game, and Cooper Kupp wins the Super Bowl MVP award. I'm going to put a stat on it, over 100 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns.
For me, I do agree that the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. I've thought about putting the Bengals in there, but I think that, one, Los Angeles has the home crown, especially for the Super Bowl. It's going to be absolutely wild. And 2, I think the veteran aspect is going to play a huge role in that Super Bowl game. I do think that Matthew Stafford is going to get the MVP. He's going to probably throw for over 200 yards, in my opinion. But now heading over to, what are the keys to the games for both of these teams in order for them to find success?
I think for the Bengals aspect of things, you have to continue to keep Joe Burrow hot and going and being able to find his receivers. We're going to have a matchup that I think is going to be one for the Super Bowl ages in Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey, arguably the best corner in football right now, versus who Jamar Chase has came on scene and may already be in the works of a top 10 receiver in the league based off his talent. It's going to be one heck of a matchup to watch. I think that T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd are going to play a very pivotal role in the Bengals being able to win this game. As the defensive side for the Bengals, you got to be able to stop Cooper Kupp. Plain, simple, obvious. He's a star of the offense, the reason they win games. You stop Cooper Kupp, you win yourself a Super Bowl.
Well, for the Bengals, I would agree they need to keep up the offensive tempo. But don't forget Joe Mixon. He's had a great year too. Defensively for the Bengals, you got to lock up Cooper Kupp. He's been phenomenal this year. I would even say he at least deserves a vote for league MVP. For the Rams, though, I would say put pressure on Joe Burrow. You've got Aaron Donald, and Von Miller in the front 7. Great guys at rushing the quarterback. You also need to lock up Jamar Chase on the defensive side as well. For the offense, gotta use Cooper Kupp if you can. Maybe the run game is going to be a bit difficult to do, but I think they can do it. I still believe the Rams will win.
I think both of these teams have a threatening offense, and each one of them has an elite quarterback and an elite receiver. For the Bengals, it's got to be Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. For the Rams, it's Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. I think it's really going to come down to how well these defenses perform. The offenses are definitely going to show, but maybe it's going to come down to which defense is going to get that one stop that's going to turn the tide of the game? And what are some other players do you think they're going to have to show up in this game?
For the Bengals, it's got to be the cornerbacks. Eli Apple, Chidobe Awuzie, both of those guys have to step up in order to prevent Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. for absolutely taking over this game. Other things, for the Rams side, you have to be able to establish a running game. You got Cam Akers back, who came off very fast from an Achilles injury. You have Sony Michel, who's been doing very well in the absence of Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Rams, got to get that run game going. And Bengals, your corners have to be at the top of their game.
I fully agree on the Rams aspect. Sony Michel and Cam Akers need to be able to run the ball effectively down the throats of the Bengals. For the Bengals, hard to say which player needs to pop off because really they've been doing that all season long, all playoffs long. One X factor would probably, like you said, be the cornerbacks. They need to just lock down the receivers for the Rams.
All right, guys, that's all we have time for today. We had some great discussion, and we want to thank you for tuning into WCTV. We'll be back with more content throughout the semester, so make sure you check out our YouTube page on WCTV. From all of us here on Plead Your Case, we'll see you next time.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.